Happy to tell you about myself, who I am, and what I do. My name is Clay Bassford. I'm the founder and CEO of Bespoke Sound. We are what we like to call a sonic identity studio. So we work kind of like a branding agency, but focusing specifically on sound, working with hospitality brands like hotels and restaurants to help them tell their story through music and through sound, and to create, maybe strengthen their sense of community through great music, connection with creative culture and their guests. Yeah, so to help a prospective client or client define the sound of their space, we try to come at it from as many different angles as we can. So, of course, we have a lot of conversations with the business to understand what their story is, who their guests are, why does the business exist in the first place? What are they trying to give to the world or offer to their guests? So what are the experiential expectations? What are guests doing on site? Are they there for a crazy party weekend? Are they there for a quiet wellness retreat or a romantic getaway or a time with family or friends? All of these types of experiences have vastly different expectations. And so different expectations for activities, different expectations, therefore, for mood or energy. And so first, we talk with the client about all of that sort of stuff. And then we also do our own research, looking into what have other people been saying about the business, either on online reviews or reporting from different publications, try to really dig into what that experience looks like in practice. And then we have our own sort of perspectives on what can work in these different environments and different spaces to complement or enhance these different energies. And we sort of steer the ship in that regard, along with our client, but we collaborate with DJs and artists from all over the world who have a much more nuanced understanding of certain cultures or subcultures within music, whether it's geographic or styles of music or decades. And so it's a collaborative approach where the client has a vision, we help them translate that vision into music, and then we use all of these creative experts within our network to help us authentically and accurately represent that vision for the client and ultimately for the guests. Do guests notice the music? I think that's a really good question, because sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. I think it's come into more common everyday lexicon, but there's this concept of lean forward or lean back music, or lean forward, lean back entertainment. Lean forward being it engages you, you're actively interacting with this entertainment or this media, where lean back is kind of something in the background, something that sort of sets the atmosphere, but you don't necessarily notice. And within that lies a whole spectrum. And so it sort of depends on what the objective is. For example, in a spa experience, you probably want something that's pretty far in the lean back direction, because you want the focus to be on the meditative qualities or the kind of relaxing qualities of the experience. And so if the music is too attention grabbing, it's distracting, it gets in the way of the experience. Whereas if you have a lively bar that's really popular with locals on a Friday night, you want something that's more lean forward to help actively accentuate the experience and encourage guests to stay longer, spend more money, which I think brings us to the second part of the question, which is ultimately what's the ROI, or how do businesses experience the impact of music? And, I think it's, as is often the case with creative services, it can be difficult to fully quantify the ROI, but we know for a fact that there are a number of areas where music can impact, if not transform, a business. There was a big study years ago that found that when F&B businesses play music that's on brand, they have a 9.6% increase in sales. And so just one night alone with better music can be a substantial windfall for a business. And then there's also a positive impact on brand loyalty and repeat visits and online reviews. Basically, if the music is good and in line with your guests' expectations, they're going to have a much better time, which means they're more likely to come back more often, tell their friends about their stay or their visit, and create a much healthier long-term relationship between the brand and guests. In regards to how we balance between the business's kind of current audience and that audience's expectations versus how they want to present themselves and maybe aspire to be, it's also kind of a case-by-case basis. I think it can't be one way in one direction or one way fully in the other. It has to be a balance between the two where you're giving guests what they expect, but maybe taking them a little further than they expected possible in terms of the quality of the experience. So it's about kind of striking the middle ground because they do want to be, surprised and delighted, as the phrase goes. And so you also have to make them feel comfortable. So it's this balance between the two where they want to feel comfortable, they want these subconscious cues that they're part of the crowd, they're in the right place, and they're part of a community that they want to be a part of. And music can send all sorts of signals that take them in that direction. But then to really go above and beyond, you want to take them a bit further and give them something that maybe they weren't expecting. So I'd say it usually falls somewhere in between, and it depends on how aggressive the business wants to be in pushing their guests towards their vision for the future rather than where they are now. Number one tip I would recommend for businesses who want to curate their own playlists and take a DIY approach is use a commercial platform that allows for licensing of the music for commercial use. So SoundMachine, or there are others out there, but many businesses use Spotify, they use Apple Music or YouTube, and those are just not allowed for use almost anywhere in the world. So use the right platform first. And then some other advice would be think about the flow of energy throughout the day. So if you're a breakfast, lunch, dinner restaurant, the vibe during breakfast is going to be different than lunch, is going to be different than dinner. And you can even get granular with happy hour and late night or weekend brunch, whatever it might be. So I would say try to have at least 2 playlists, like maybe daytime and nighttime. And then from there, you can figure out how much you want to manage. But more than one playlist is a good idea to try to have the appropriate, the optimal vibe at each time of day. And relatedly, I would also caution that it's a lot more work than you think, and most of that work comes from keeping the playlist fresh. You can spend, a long weekend putting together some awesome playlists that will be great in your business for a couple months, but after you've heard that every day for 60 days in a row, you're never going to want to hear those songs again. So being sure that if you do go the DIY route, having a method to keep the music updated. There are existing playlists or stations in SoundMachine terminology that DIY users can use that are updated. So that's kind of a good hack. But if you really want to be hands-on and fully control every song that's in the catalog of music that you're playing in your space, then there's no shortcuts. You just got to take the time to do it. And in that case, you can always do a barter with a friend who's the DJ and give them a meal or some drinks on the house. Or there are ways to kind of, tie it all together. But it does take some effort. It's not a kind of set it and forget it process. And finally, in terms of specific song selection, we like to use a few rules of thumb where, for example, if a song is over 6 minutes long, it's got to be really on brand, or else it's just too long and people will start to notice that the same song is still playing. So we tend to keep songs under that length of time. If there's a lot of silence or non-musical intros or outros, we cut those out because those also can be distracting and take away from the atmosphere. And then if there's like a really crazy guitar solo or really intense parts of a song that don't exist in the rest of the song, we'll usually skip those as well. So those are some kind of good starting points for song selection. In reality, I recommend shuffle because that's going to get you the most variety and keep it as fresh as possible. It can be really painful to hear the same sequence of songs over and over in the same order. You have more control when it's played sequentially, but that if you're using the playlist more than for like a one-off event, it's better to have it on shuffle. We worked a lot with Albert's Resorts collection. They're based primarily here in the US. They've got 30-something properties, but they also have some in Latin America and Europe. They're growing pretty quickly. We've had a great relationship with them over the past few years and worked on a number of their properties and new openings. And I think the really cool thing about working with them, and also the challenge that we try to always rise to meet, is each of their properties that we work with have a unique vibe. So it's not a hotel chain or restaurant chain where every location has the same music. Each one has its own identity, its own story to tell, its own type of guest. And so we know where the brand perspective lies, but then we have to figure out where the individual property's perspective is within that world. And so having that variety with each project is a very fun challenge to have, because it keeps us thinking creatively and finding new sort of nuances in music with which to communicate, their desired aesthetic. So with Albert's Resorts, some other cool things that we do with them, which I think is always fun when it comes up, is we do kind of extensions of their core sonic identity through other activations. What this means is we do brand playlists on Spotify. So a lot of their properties have their own Spotify profiles, and we do shorter, more digestible forms of the music you hear on site. And so it could be, a 2-hour playlist that you'd hear during happy hour at the restaurant at, say, Stanley Ranch in Napa Valley, or what you would hear when you're at the spa at, Lodge at Blue Sky in Utah. And so we do these little showcase playlists, and they use them in many different ways, but some ways are on a QR code in a guest room or at the front desk, or they include them as a link on their website or share on social media, or even in like confirmation or reminder emails, they can send a playlist and say, hey, get ready for your trip. Can't wait to host you. Here's a little sample of the vibe on property. And then it's also useful in kind of spreading their reach on social media. So sharing playlists on Instagram, for instance, and having their guests and fans follow them on Spotify is a useful sort of extension of the music. I would say from a client perspective, some things that are really useful in our daily usage of SoundMachine is the block and skip and like functionality. The team at SoundMachine gives us reports every month that show us how clients have interacted with the music in SoundMachine, whether they've skipped or blocked or liked. And so we use that as tangible data that can inform our updates. So we can see if someone skipped this softer jazz song 4 times, then that's probably not working in the space. And we know to steer things aesthetically away from that style of music. So that's really useful. And the client has the ability to give immediate feedback, which is also always really good because it makes them feel like they're able to act on, something they want to change. And then we can adjust with that information in real time. Some other functionality that we like, I appreciate how quick to respond the SoundMachine team is when we have support issues from clients. That's also so important for us because most of our clients are, luxury boutique or lifestyle hotels or high-end brands. And so they have certain expectations for service. And so having SoundMachine ready to help out when an issue arises is very important for our clients and ends up, making us look good. So appreciate that from them as well. If anyone listening wants to chat and just pick our brain a little bit more about how to go about curating music themselves, or doesn't know where to start, or maybe wants a little help curating music for their hospitality business, very happy to do a consultation, no cost. Hop on the phone and chat. Feel free to reach out.